Welcome back. I'm Jen. I'm a conscious parenting coach and I support queer, non-monogamous, and neurodivergent people to deal with the challenges of parenting outside the box. And I'm here with David working on our Polyamory Parenting 101 series. Today, we're going to be talking about how to talk to your kids about being polyamorous. And David, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, I'm David. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a licensed psychologist and professor, therapist and researcher. I'm also a queer poly person. So I've got personal and professional sides to this, and I look forward to getting to share with the audience kind of our next steps here. So how
Yeah.
do we share with our kids um, that we're poly? Where do you,
Yeah.
Jen?
So I always start with how do you talk to your kids about relationships in general?
Hmm.
Because if your kids have never encountered the idea that relationships could be anything other than a mom and a dad and kids living in a house together, then it's going to be confusing if you just suddenly tell them that
By the
your
way,
relationship is not that.
right, right. So I think it would sound, like, hey, some families are two moms, some families are two dads, and some families have one parent, right? So it's kind of starting with that framework for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and then introducing the idea of polyamory in general. Some families could have two moms and a dad, or,
Right.
in some families, parents live together in the same house, and in
Mhm.
some families, some of the important adults live in a different house.
Mhm.
And if your child is familiar with divorce, they'll already be familiar with that as a concept.
Step parents, those kind of things.
Hmm.
No, I really like this approach. I think the how do we tell them gets wrapped up in where are they at, where are our kids at developmentally, right? If they're elementary school or younger, even into middle school, some kids are going to have different cognitive development where they might be able to understand more complex themes more easily. Some children who, even into teenage years or into young adulthood, if one of your children has developmental differences or learning differences, right, you can still use some of these strategies about starting with the theme of relationships. And you can start with the diversity of, man, relationships can look all kinds of ways. We know this family, that family. And you don't have to meet it like head on as a personal disclosure right away of like, and now you need to know that I am a polyamorous person, right? So start with just getting them to talk, right? What kind of families have you seen? And see what their experiences are. I think this is a nice segue into when you are maybe talking with an older child, a teenager, even young adults, right? Asking them first, what do they know about non-monogamy, right? Hey, have you ever heard about polyamory, right? It's kind of, we see it in the headlines, we see it in the new, we're seeing it more and more, books on the shelf, things like that. So asking first about their knowledge, to get them kind of warmed up to the conversation before you disclose, I think is a really important step. The other thing is the how, however you tell them based in their development and where they're at cognitively, let there be silence. Let there be just that kind of quiet, watch their nonverbals and let them ask questions, right? And as adults, we, I think in parenting in particular, one of my strategies is always answer the question that's being asked. Don't, if they're asking you, well, how long have you been poly? 5 years, right? You don't have to go into, well, it started, well, I was first dating this person and then dating that, right? It's been four. Answer the question that they're asking and give them time and space to develop and ask those questions and let them know that it's not just one conversation. I think that's one of the worst things is when it's like one conversation and then the message is we're never going to talk about it again. Right? It's like, ugh, so icky. So let them know that, as they're thinking about it in the week ahead or in the months ahead, if you have other questions, text me, right? My teenager loves to text me, right? And it kind of takes the heat off of things. Let them know they can follow up with you as well.
Yeah, one of the other places that I like to invite people to start with asking questions is asking kids who are the adults that are important to them.
Mm,
And it doesn't matter whether you are close with those. It might be their teacher that you occasionally talk to, but you're
Hmm.
not close to.
Yeah.
But you also might find out that like one of your good friends is like one of their favorite people, and you had no idea that this person was so important to your child,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it again it invites opening up the idea of who are the people who are important to us,
Hmm.
and opening up the idea of like just like you have all these people that are important to you, I can also have more people that are important to me.
Hmm. Yeah.
And some of those people might become important to you as well, and
Hmm.
maybe not, depending on the
Hmm.
relationship.
Right. The other part of how do we tell, and this might take us into another section as well, but I want to always remind people that maintaining and nurturing your relationship with your kiddos, right? Knowing that that has to be cultivated as well after the conversation, right? The how do we talk to them needs to also lead to follow up of if it does cause a bit of a rupture or some, maybe you get the silent treatment for a couple days, finding ways to reconnect where there's low pressure, there is no expectation to talk about it if they need some time. A friend of mine, when they discussed being poly with their teenager, they had probably 3 days of the silent treatment. And, the the teenager was upset and they just needed to let that space exist so that they could process. And then when reconnection was possible, kid came out of their room and they were ready to talk a little bit more. So we have to give space.
And with that comes the possibility that they might not understand or be
Mm,
stoked about it.
yeah.
And just like other challenging conversations, like telling a child that you're moving and they're going to
Mhm.
leave a school that they love,
So
or that
hard.
you're getting divorced and you're not going to live together with their other bio parent anymore, just like those conversations, we don't necessarily not have them just because a kid might be upset about it.
Hmm.
But how do we nurture ourselves, our child, our relationship with our child, allowing them to be unhappy,
Hmm.
and also holding space for I love you, and I get it that this is hard for you to hear.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's an uncomfortable spot as a parent. We don't want to see them in discomfort. We don't want to see them angry or upset. But that is part of managing their own emotions and part of emotion regulation is in their lives, they will run into those difficulties. And how we tell them, can be a moment of actually deepening the relationship between you and them.
Yeah. And if needed, you can get support for yourself, and
Yes.
you can get support for them,
Mm.
or for you together.
Right, right. It can be a great time, for some professional support or even, like your group, parenting group. It's, lean in and find the folks who are maybe a few steps down the road ahead of you who have managed it, and lean into that support when you need it as well.
Yeah, and at the same time, not assuming that it's going to be a hard or stressful or difficult conversation,
Mhm.
because your child might be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. My best friend's poly, it's great.
Mhm.
Or they might be young enough to just go, oh okay, love can
Mhm.
be that way too, and it's
Right.
not a big deal. It's not necessarily going to be a hard and challenging
No.
conversation.
Especially when they're young, it'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Let's play Legos. Like there's they are still kind of developing their own ego and they're kind of still a little self-centered sometimes. So they think about how is it going to affect me? Am I still going to have
Mhm.
time with mom, dad, other? And if they know that to be the case, then we can make that
Yeah.
reconnection.
And who will love me, who will take care of
Yeah,
me, who will
yeah.
be with me. Hmm. Yeah, those are the
So
questions for younger kids.
yeah.
Yeah. And then one last piece that I want to bring out is about the questions that they might ask, and
Mhm.
we'll probably make some other videos about some of the common things that kids ask. But it's always okay to say, I don't know, or I need to think about that and come back to it. You don't have to worry about having every possible answer on the spot in the very
No,
first conversation you have.
no. But we put ourselves in that space where it's like, oh, I got to be able to answer everything. And I find I have to think about that. Let me do some of my own reading or let me do some of my own thinking and I will revisit that with you to be really powerful. That's also a model for how trusting grown conversations can and should go. We don't have to, talk out of our ass. We should pause, we should think, we should sometimes collect ourselves. So that's a really good point.
All right. Any last things you want to offer on
No,
how
no,
we tell our kids?
I hope people find the conversation helpful and um, take it slow, think it through, think about developmental stages, and get resources when you need them. Talk to people who have done this before.
Great. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Jen.